And here we are, day 62 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge, and we are on the very last day of Stefan Gagne week. And what better way to end this week than to read a piece of fiction? Why do I... again, with a weird ending of words. What better way than to end with a piece of fiction called The Ends? The Ends. This is a... hold on, let me get to it. This is a Ranma 1/2 fanfic, which was a farewell to Ranma 1/2 and his condemnation of it, according to the little blurb for it. And, yeah, it's a little bit of an interesting experiment for the Ranma 1/2 universe. But let's have a read of it, shall we? And, let's start from the top. Oh boy, 2 female voices. That's not great. Okay, let's go. And they lived happily ever after, Akane concluded, looking up brightly from the paper she held. Nabiki was nonplussed. So, did you like it? Akane asked. No, Nabiki said flatly. It wasn't realistic. What? Let me get this straight, Nabiki said, leaning forward for that sort of sitting ethos you can only get from invading someone's personal space without actually moving from your rear. The fighter, the princess, the Amazon, and the cook are all facing down the evil dragon that's terrorizing the land. The fighter's curse isn't lifted by killing the dragon, but he decides to go ahead and marry the princess anyway, am I right? Right. So they have the wedding, and the Amazon and the cook and the evil sorceress they ditched a few pages back all storm in and stop the wedding, and they lived happily ever after? Well, see, they're still going to get married, just not at that moment, because the others interrupted. But the others still want the fighter to be their husband, right? Right. So how can they live happily ever after? Nothing really changed. Because each of the girls has a partner they'll eventually marry, and then they'll leave that warrior alone so he and the princess can be wed. Well, Akane protested. I didn't see that. My reading is horrible. Akane protested. But they still interrupted things, Nabiki noted. That shows they still want him. They're still in love with the Pratt. If anything, they went to new, violent extremes to try to get him away from the princess. What makes you think they'll grow up and abandon it later? Throat. It's supposed to be assumed. I'm just not seeing it, Nabiki shrugged. Given past history, they'll stick to him like glue. So there's no real closure to the story. It doesn't really end, it just keeps going, like it had been going before. Maybe if you change the ending. Change it to what? You're the doing... Change it to what? You're the one doing the assignment, not me. I've already got an A in creative writing. Better figure it out yourself. Oh, Nabiki, Akane grumbled. Fine, Ranma, how would you end the story? Both girls turned to look at the noble martial artist, currently busy draped across the crowd. Wow, I don't know what's wrong with me today. Currently busy draped across the couch to watch the final episode of Maizone Koku. Ha 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 ha. Sorry. Huh? He asked, looking up. My story for class. How would you end it? Akane asked, waving the paper at him. What story? I haven't been paying attention. Fortunately, they would be rerunning that episode in a few months because Ranma wasn't conscious for the big finale. And then we get a little bit of a page break here. Ranma held the ice pack to his head, reading over the typewritten pages. Typewritten? Wow, okay. Reading over the typewritten pages, Akane had told him he'd better read before tomorrow or else. He had retreated to the roof, supposedly in order to get some peace and quiet so he could read Akane's story, but mostly because he didn't want anybody watching over his shoulder while he did so, specifically Akane. She had been asking on the thing for several days now, claiming she she couldn't make it work out the way she wanted. Often, Ranma could see her pacing around the house with that frustrated look she often had whenever he had supposedly done something wrong, and she was angry at him. This time, however, she said it was writer's block. Ranma just steered clear of her, and did his martial arts, or watched TV, or even just stared at the wall. It beat getting involved with the stupid tomboy when she was like this, all touchy and stuff. Ranma just didn't get why she cared so much about the project. It was just schoolwork, after all. He asked once, and got his answer and a mallet as a bonus point. "You'd know if you'd read it, Baka," was a retort. Of course, if he did read it, he'd better have the right response to it, or life could get far, far worse for him very quickly. "Not much choice now," he grumbled. He perused, oh god, I never know how to say that word, perused the pages and the paragraphs, pondering the plot in a partially perplexed poise. Aha! Alliteration is always fun. It seemed to be a basic fantasy story, like you'd see one in one of those animes where people wave around swords, get into wars, and yell each other's names in combat scenes. It started with a princess whose rather stupid father was king of a small country called Eriman. The father and a king from a country called Atomes had agreed to wed the two families together and introduced the princess to the captain of the guard, the prince of the Aotomes. A strong, handsome fighter, but the fighter and the princess argued a lot, even though the princess really liked the fighter and hoped he liked her too. But then an evil sorceress showed up in a magician's duel to try to split them, then a crazy Amazon warrior from a jungle kingdom, then a cook who apparently was a former girlfriend of the fighter, and the princess was consistently worrying that these girls would ruin her chance for a happy ending. Ruin her chance at a happy ending. Lots of stuff happened. The group went to the land of Hinak to slay a dragon called Usunkyoj. I know, it's meant to be Jusenkyo. God, it's been such a long time. It's been a long time since I've done anything anime related. That's a lie. I just realized, no, I have done something anime related recently, but okay. Usenkyoj. That would cure an enchantment on the prince, and they had a wedding, but it got interrupted, and they all lived happily ever after. Blah. What kind of a story was that? Like one guy could really get all those girls after him, or like one accident after another would keep happening, and the ending was weird. The girls supposedly had found other guys, but they still wanted the fighter, and nobody really got married. Ranma was about to decide to tell Akane that she really needed to work on the thing more when a moment of clarity hit him upside the head. It so happens that somehow the stars aligned at that exact moment, so that for no scientifically explainable reason, Ranma had a burst of logical power beyond his normal faculties that enabled him to sit bolt upright, clutching the paper, and exclaim in a surprised tone, "Hey, wait! This is about us!" And then there's another page break here. Life began crashing down on Ranma that night like a load of life. He had just experienced a real eye-opener. In 17 double-spaced pages, he had seen his entire life in this town nicely summarized, all the problems, all the strife, the good bits and the bad bits that always interrupted the good bits, all the fears and concerns, and it scared the bejesus out of him. Ranma had never really put much thought to it. Sure, he knew in a general sense that his life was more complicated than he'd wanted it to be. But the scope of it, the fiancés, the rivals, the enemies, and the fights, looping onto itself. I wonder if there'll be like one recording where I don't burp. I don't think that'll happen. Looping onto itself time and time again with near misses at success and repeated disappointments. The effect was akin to walking around with 2 martinis in your bloodstream for a year, then having someone step behind you and stick a needle full of black coffee in your arm. Ranma had always figured that as long as he kept himself strong and a good martial artist and tried not to get killed, everything would work itself out nicely. The story was a little vague in areas and tended to favor the princess over the others, but it set the rusty gerbil wheel of his mind. I said wield, didn't I? It's wheel. The story was a little vague in areas and tended to favor the princess over the others, but it set the rusty gerbil wheel of his mind a spitty. Of course, Akane would feel awful about the whole mess, how she'd have to worry about the others stealing him away. Of course, Ukyo would have the conflict of being a friend and a fiancé. Of course, Shampoo... I'm doing this wrong, aren't I? Of course Akane would feel awful about the whole mess, how she'd have to worry about the others stealing him away. Of course Ukyo would have the conflict of being a friend and a fiancé. Of course Shampoo would unrelentingly try anything she could to get him. Of course... Kadachi was an insane freak before she met him. The vastness of the entire enchilada was staggering. It was a tangled mess of hate, love, and screw-ups, twisted into itself 60,000 times, with a little red dot off-center and a little red arrow and little red words reading, "You are here," and a taunting exit somewhere a mile away. It was numbing to the core to try and grasp it. Just to make things worse, the second wave of his moment of clarity hit him a little to the left of the first one, in the form of an important but simple question. Now what? Akane's story had a proposed ending where they tried to get married. Hogwash! Like he'd marry that uncute tomboy. But, well, given the very hypothetical, never could happen but wonder if situation of him wanting to marry her, would it happen this way? Probably. The other girls wouldn't let it go uncontested. Maybe they'd even be driven to use bombs and weapons and such. That would be bad. Ranma didn't want that. He didn't really solve anything, is the problem. No, not the problem. The challenge. A challenge! Of course! It was a challenge for Ranma to figure out the way to get a nice, happy ending for everybody. So maybe there could be some peace and quiet, and the people he knew would have the lives they could, well, live with. All his life was preparing him for this moment. He would find a solution. Ranma always wins the fight, even if it takes a few rounds and some trips to the emergency room to get there. Try that one again. He would find a solution. Ranma always wins the fight, even if it takes a few rounds and some trips to the emergency room to get there. Boldly, Ranma stepped forward into a bright new tomorrow, with no more indecision, and walked directly off the roof. And then there's another little page break here. Akane looked up at the entirely too familiar splash, put down her shoujo manga, and ran out into the backyard. There's no out in there. And ran into the backyard. "Ranma," she called. "Are you alright?" A sputtering, dejected-looking Ranma pulled herself out of the pond. The papers of Akane's story fluttered the thankfully dry ground. Ranma envied them. "I'm fine," Ranma said, the surprise and shock of cold water having knocked him back to his normally dull senses. "Go heat some water, will you? It's freezing out here tonight." Did you?" Akane asked, shuffling her bunny-slippered feet nervously. "Huh? You know." "No, what?" "The story." "Oh. Yeah. That. Uh-huh. Ah." Pause. "I'm not sure about the ending," Ranma said in the flattest, most honest, most sincere tones she could muster. "Really? Neither was I, but, well, I didn't know how else to end it," Akane said with disappointed tones. "I just couldn't figure out anything else." "Do you want any help with it?" Ranma asked, wringing out her shirt. "Help? You know, with the ending. I'd like to help you find a better one." And scroll down some more. "Really?" Akane asked, brightening like a halogen lamp. That's a weird analogy, but I'll go with that. Brightening like a halogen lamp. "You've got a better idea?" "You've got a better idea?" "No, but At least not yet, Ranma noted. When's the project due? Not until after the weekend. Akane, I swear to you, on my family name, I will have a better ending by Monday so you can finish your story, Ranma declared, in the same tone she normally used in declaring that he would kick some princely ass to rescue Akane from whoever kidnapped her this time. Akane beamed like one of those spotlights that rent out to announce the opening of a new supermarket. 600 yen says she doesn't make it. 600 yen says he doesn't make it, Nabiki aside to Kasumi, listening from the living room. Cars. I think this will be the last ending we will go, the last section we will read. Ranma had set his loom, loom, I think it's pretty lum. Ranma had set his alarm clock to wake him bright and early the next morning at 7 a.m. so he'd have the entire day to devote to the fight. So excited was he that he stayed up doing some preliminary thinking, sort of a training session for the challenge. He was surprised at how limp and flaccid his mental powers were when he went through some of the Mensa mind exercises of the book Nabiki had loaned him. He doubled his efforts, determined not to be too weak to face up to this and become a lean, cognitive machine. In other words, he squinted at funny words with lots of syllables in them until falling asleep at 3 a.m. Then got zapped by the loom alarm clock 4 hours later. He slumped, exhausted and spent, into the bathroom where he fell asleep with a toothbrush in his mouth for another hour and a half before setting out on his new geese. Oh yes, geese, I know what that word was. Before setting out on his new geese, cursing his luck at losing time to such a frivolous thing as sleep. He had a deadline here, and a fight to win after all. Fortunately, in his planning session, he had developed a plan. The idea was this. He'd sampled the ideas for the end of the story from everyone he knew, cleverly masking that he was actually trying to solve his life. Then he'd pick the one that sounded best and go with it. 2 heads are better than 1, the book had said. What could be better than approximately a dozen or more heads? Yeah, he had this thing licked. He doesn't have this thing licked. Things go horribly for him. But you will know more if you read the rest of this fanfiction on pixelscapes.com. Well, that was Ranma 1/2 The Ends by Stefan Gagne. And this is the end of Stefan Gagne week. I hope you enjoyed this particular week as much as I enjoyed reading it, because his words have a certain music to them. I just apologize for the amount of horrible tripping I did for many of the things I did here, but hopefully it'll be still enjoyable for everyone involved. So that was day 62 of the 100 Days of Narration Challenge. Be sure to be around tomorrow when I go to day 63, and we will have another Mystery Book Challenge. Mystery Book Challenge number 63. Is it 7? No. 9. 9! 9? 9! It's Mystery Book Challenge number 9! 9. Okay, so be around for that. I'm still deciding what I'm going to do, but it's going to be another theme week because that seems to be working out for us so far. So, yeah, we'll go along with that. All right, thank you, everybody. Hey, you seem like a cool, wonderful, and or awesome individual with impeccable taste in voice actors. So why not follow me on Facebook or Twitter? You can keep up with the latest projects I'm in, or that my friends are in, or that you could be in, because I occasionally post links to open editions to various projects that require voice acting out there, or that nobody's in, but they're interesting projects nonetheless that you may also find interesting. Also, lots of random thoughts about whatever's on my mind at that particular moment. Usually it's about food or video games or foodie video games. Anyway, you can follow me on Facebook at OmadonVA or Twitter at Omadon. Hope to see you there.